This is a story of mystery, drugs, and death. But like all good stories, it has its beginnings in the most innocent of places. This story begins in the town I grew up in, a small corner of the northwestern New Jersey. And New Jersey has two major cities, New York and Philadelphia. I may as well just say this line anyway, neither of which are in New Jersey. But it was essentially preordained that when I grew up, I would live in one of these two major metros or stay in the shire that I grew up in. And I saw nothing wrong with these options, and I never really felt the need to expand my horizons. But when I was 21, I was enchanted by a visit to San Francisco, and I vowed that I would one day live there. Chapter 1, Mystery. When I was 26, I had just accepted a job offer in San Francisco, and I was going to make good on my vow to myself to live there. I was ecstatic to assimilate to my new foggy bohemian lifestyle in the city by the bay. But I wondered, would I just be a permanent tourist, or would I find a way to contribute to this already established city that I was going to be an outsider in? Where I was going to live was a mystery in and of itself. But eventually, I found a spot in the Mission, the lively but unpolished corner of the city. And I ran into an issue almost immediately with my newfound utopian lifestyle, in that I'm not a deep sleeper. And as it turns out, the absolute best time to deal drugs was at 3:30 in the morning outside of my bedroom window. And every night, I had front row tickets to the same show. Chapter 2, Drugs. Every night, as money and drugs would exchange hands, I would be awoken to the chorus of the A word, the B word, the C word, most disappointingly the N word, the F word, the MF word, and of course the HE double hockey stick word. And as I would lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering what I should do about this, I would go through a number of options that were not very effective. I could call the cops. I could go outside and reason with them like an adult. I could buy a paintball gun. But then I had an epiphany. And I went on Amazon, and 2 business days later, I had what I needed. A Dr. Prankster's fart machine. A device no larger than a soda can that could be remotely operated from the safety and comfort of his or her bay window. This device featured 12 sounds, running from the short and punchy to the suspiciously long and medically concerning. I placed this device in the tree across the street from me, and I went to bed. Like clockwork, 3:30 rolled around, and I was awoken to the sound of, and I'm paraphrasing, "Mother effer, you owe me this amount of money for this amount of drugs, mother effer." So I rolled over, and I grabbed my remote, and I started punctuating the conversation happening outside. "And if you don't pay me this amount of money for this amount of drugs, then I most certainly am going to have to kill you." Chapter 3, Death. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Every night, the cycle was the same. Someone would wake me up, I'd roll over, I'd push the button a couple times, someone would say, "Who's doing that?" I'd smirk, and I'd go back to bed. But eventually, this started to feel stale, and I started to crave a little bit more of excitement. And I started to use the device for sport rather than simply, personal defense. And I chased the dragon a little too closely one day, and in broad daylight, I annihilated a family with a particularly loud fart. But instead of continuing on like the others had, the mother turned around, plucked my device from a tree, and kept walking. I couldn't believe it. I was disarmed, defenseless, and I had been left completely defeated. But above all, I couldn't believe that this stage of my life was now over. But then it dawned on me that nothing is permanent. And 2 business days later, I had another, a fart machine Mark II, if you will. But this time, I had my much taller than me roommate climb that same tree, and on the highest bough, bungee it with some twigs and some leaves for camouflage. Now, no mortal man, only the gods themselves could disarm me. And that they did. One day, I came out to find it was raining. And this was causing the device to short circuit, and it was farting every 3 seconds. Perplexed, I looked up at the tree, and I thought, I should do something about this. But the truth is, I wasn't tall enough. So I went to my office. Later in the evening, I came back to find the device was still farting every 3 seconds. Still not tall enough to do anything about it, I went inside and I eventually went to sleep. When I awoke, it was clear that the device had died, having sang its final swan song in the darkest hours before dawn. But it brings a smile to my face to think that somewhere a tourist tells his family the story of that day. The tale of the flatulent tree of San Francisco. Epilogue. I thought about getting a third device, but by then I wasn't being bothered as much anymore. Gentrification had been doing its job, and I think I honestly learned how to sleep a little bit better in loud environments. Also, someone had given me a ticket to Burning Man, so my focus had shifted a little bit. But every now and then, I'll stand underneath that tree and I'll look up and I'll think about that device. And I think that this is partially because a little of me died the day that it did. And it's partially because it's still up there, and it's actually super conspicuous if you look at that tree. But regardless, I like to think that I left my mark in my adopted city, and that I will always, ever so slightly, be part of its lore. Thank you.